Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stroke Quality Exchange call. My name is Audrey, and I will be your moderator today. Feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation by typing them in the Q&A section on the right-hand side of your screen. The slides and links to the presentation will be sent out within 1 or 2 weeks of today's presentation. I will now turn over the presentation to Deb, our Senior Director for Quality.
Thank you, Audrey, and welcome everybody to the Stroke Quality Exchange. We hold this little presentation quarterly. I have lots of information to give you today, so I'm going to get started right away. So our agenda, we did the welcome already. I'll talk a little bit about day-to-days, share with you some of our PMT updates, talk a little bit about the statin measures. There's a lot of confusion around that. Talk about some important dates, some educational opportunities, tell you about what's coming soon, make a few announcements, and then what's on the horizon. So first of all, why do we do day-to-days in the Southwest states? So this is just an example of an email you should have gotten last week from your director. The reason we do this is we just want to kind of let everybody know where they are for the award season. So we do these reports quarterly. You may notice at this time a couple things. First of all, it's a little bit later than it typically is, and we were able, by extending that timeline, we were able to have better information as far as where you were. When we were doing them like shortly after the July, in July, a lot of the information wasn't even extracted yet, but this time we noticed that a lot more information was extracted, so I think the reports were even more valuable. We do show you, the detailed highlighted measures, so if everything in green on your report means that you're on target. If there's anything in red, that means that there's a fallout. And then if there's fallouts in the Achievement Award, then we also attach a document, an Excel document that will show you what the actual patient fallouts are, which gives you an opportunity then to go back and take a look at them, see if there's some missed documentation, if there is an error or whatever. So I hope that these are useful for you. This time we were not able to get our really, really nice, beautiful reports that we typically get because we didn't have the data that we needed. So we had to do it the old-fashioned way. So the reports weren't as beautiful as the other ones were, but still relayed the same information. If you did not get this information from your director, then please reach out to them and they can get the information to you. So next I'm going to talk about some PMT updates, and these actually were implemented in May of this last year. So in May, they added the Target Stroke 3 updates, phase 3 updates. So on the stroke limited form, there was added the reason for delay and alteplase for 30 minutes. And we do know that there is an issue with an inability to select the reason for the delay on some of the 30-minute ones. That fix is scheduled, but we do not have a release date yet. It for sure will be fixed before it is time for award season, but I just don't have the date yet. For the MER form, they added the documentation of first pass. That's an element from the comprehensive layer. And then for the measures, there's added 2 new measures for target stroke, the measure set, and we went through all of this on our last call, so I'm not going to go in great detail. Again, they added the door in, door out, and the time to IV alteplase of 30 minutes. And then they added the new door to device measure, 60 minutes if transferred from outside, and 90 minutes if they present directly, I'm sorry. That last measure you can get independently of the stroke honor roll thing. So just so you know, that is a separate measure. Some people don't do MER, so they're not going to have that measure. But another thing to note is you need to have the STK layer activated, or some of these measures are not going to populate correctly for you. If there's any questions at any time, please type them in the box, and then Audrey will let me know. So stop me at any time you have questions. Some other updates was the intensive statin therapy measure logic was updated in the May edition. and that was that intensive statin. It was related to the new release of the cholesterol guidelines, and those cholesterol guidelines are to include the percent of acute ischemic stroke and TIA patients who are prescribed a high-intensity statin at discharge, or if they're less than 75 years, or greater than 75 years, greater than 75 years of age, they're prescribed at least a moderate intensity statin therapy at discharge. And I'll talk a little bit more about this measure in the next slide. However, this intensive statin therapy measure is regardless of what the LDL is. So it does get a bit confusing, and hopefully I can help clear some of this information up. We also added the TJC layer updates for the acute stroke ready inpatient and the acute stroke ready outpatient. So if you are an acute stroke ready hospital or want to watch those measures, a smaller hospital, then all you need to do is let your director know, and they can have that layer added to you free of charge so that you can monitor those measures as well. And then also for the TJC layer update in May, they added the STK-OP1 and the CSTK-01 measure to the stroke layer. And again, just so you know, if you do not have the STK layer activated, if you just have the limited form, then you're not going to be able to run those measures. There were several additional updates and operational updates that were outlined in that release form. If you don't have that information, then we can get that release form to you so that you do have that information. But I'm not going to go through each one of those fixes that they've done. So the 3 statin measures. There's 3 statin measures, and they all have different definitions. So the first one is a statin prescribed at discharge. That is a Get With the Guidelines achievement measure. It includes all patients that are admitted with the acute ischemic stroke or a TIA, and it's the percentage of patients that are discharged on a statin or there's a contraindication documented. The second measure is the STK-6 ischemic stroke patients who are prescribed statin medications at discharge, and that's actually a stroke certification performance measure. Those patients only include the patients that are acute ischemic stroke that were discharged on a statin. They do not include TIA patients. STK measures do not include the TIAs, just the stroke patients, ischemic and hemorrhagic, but not for this measure. And then it also, for this particular measure, there is in the guidelines that documentation of an LDL less than 70 at any time during the stay is an acceptable standalone reason for not prescribing statin medication at discharge. But there does need to be a linkage with the statin that, or the linkage to the statin is not needed, if their LDL is less than 70. And then we have the intensive statin measure, which is the newest measure from the Get With the Guidelines quality measures. And those you're required to document a reason for non-treatment if the statin daily dose does not meet the guideline recommended dose. And I have the article that supports this information. There is a link to that at the bottom of this slide, and you will get a copy of these slides after the presentation. It includes all patients 75 years or younger should receive a high-intensity statin dose unless it's contraindicated. And if patients are greater than 75, they should receive a moderate or a high dose. That is regardless of what their LDL is. So any questions about those? I know those are very confusing. So if you have a question, please type it in the box, and Audrey will let me know. Are you seeing anything, Audrey?
Not yet, Deb.
Not yet. All right. So we're going to move on to some important dates. November 29th of this year, the Quality 3 data is due to be abstracted into Get With the Guidelines. And we will do probably another quality or another data days to get that information to you. And then the quarter 4 data has to be done by February 29th, and that's for the award season. So those must be abstracted by February 29th in order to be eligible or to seek the awards. Any questions about that? All right, we're moving along. Educational opportunities. So there's been quite a few actual educational opportunities both with Get With the Guidelines and the Joint Commission. So the most recent one was yesterday. There was actually a Mission Lifeline Stroke pre-hospital care measures and the patient management tool. So there's a video and also the slides. They're on that link at the bottom here. So if you see this link, if you click on that link, you can get to all of these measures. So the Mission Life or the stroke pre-hospital care is pretty exciting, and I will go through a few of that or a little bit of that information. But there also was some webinars that were recorded and are available for you to watch. Bundled payments for care improvement, it was one, and then the Target Stroke Phase 3 launched in 2019. There's a video or a webinar about that, along with the slides that you can download. The endovascular therapy science measures and PMT updates, and so forth. So any of these are available. All you need to do is go to the website, you click on the links, and you are able to listen to the recording and download the slides. So Joint Commission also has several complimentary webinars on their website. So I put that website down there at the bottom here is their website to click on. They have 2019 certification webinar replays, and then they also have some 2018 ones that I'll show you in a minute. But the 2019 are getting started with disease-specific care. Here, a reviewer's perspective on primary stroke center, reviewer perspective on thrombectomy capable and comprehensive certification, and then the acute stroke ready hospitals. And then there's also one on the basics of clinical practice guidelines and certification performance measures. So when you get to this site for the Joint Commission, scroll all the way to the bottom of it where it says resources/contact us, and those webinars are there. If you click on the actual webinar, it will take you in. You have to register for it, and then it will play for you. There's also the 2018 ones are on the same site, and the webinars are why achieve rehab certification. There's certification performance measures like clinical practice guidelines, which was 2 of 3 in a series. The thrombectomy capable stroke certification again. Most frequently cited certification standards was the 3rd of that initial series. And then the journey to achieving disease-specific care certification. And there's one on a thrombectomy capable center testimonial. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I would encourage you to go to that website and just take a look at those. There's some really good webinars there. So what is coming soon? So if you saw the webinar yesterday, it was about the EMS update, and that update is actually going to launch in October on the 9th. With this layer, there's some really cool things that are going to happen. So one, the Get With the Guidelines Stroke EMS layer, it's a data collection form. There's 27 elements, but they're not all required. There's 14 pre-hospital care measures about the EMS processes and the outcome measures. There's an EMS feedback log. So with a single click, you can actually document on a PDF so that you can send that to your EMS partners to kind of give them an overview of what happened with their patient when they were delivered to you. It includes outcome elements and some of the time metrics. Then there also is available now an EMS time tracker that's segmented time calculation. So it's just like the time tracker that we have for stroke now. There is now one that includes the EMS elements. And then the centralized EMS agency list. So that's going to be important. I know that many of you have probably already entered your EMS agencies long ago in your PMT. However, in order for some of the things that are coming soon to work, there's a unique ID for, excuse me, all EMS agencies across platforms and sites. So it's a nationwide EMS, database that you can click on. And in order for some of our things, like I said, that's coming up, which I'll show you in a minute, that's the coolest thing of all, is you will have to repopulate that EMS agency list, but don't do it until after October 9th, till after the launch. So the Mission Lifeline Stroke pre-hospital care measures. If you have not seen those, it's a door in, door out time less than or equal to 60 minutes at the first hospital prior to transfer for acute therapy. The second one is documentation of last known well. Third one for pre-hospital is EMS first medical contact to the ED arrival, and that's a new measure. So in addition to the edits that were made to existing measures, they have added 3 new measures, and therefore that's the blue box. Also evaluation of blood glucose, identification of suspected stroke, rate-based, and on-scene time for suspected stroke, on-scene time less than or equal to 15 minutes for suspected stroke. So they're looking at the rate that occurs, less than 15 minutes. The stroke screen performed and reported, the stroke screen performed and reported distributed, and then the stroke severity score. So there's the FAST or whatever you use, and then there's also the severity scores for the LVOs. So was there a severity score performed and reported, and then also the distribution of those that were actually performed throughout the area or throughout your hospital or whatever. The time from the first medical contact to thrombectomy for acute ischemic stroke, and then the last is time for first medical contact to IV alteplase for acute ischemic stroke. So
hey,
those
Deb.
are going to be the, yes?
Sorry, we do have a question.
Okay.
She asked, are the pre-hospital care measures strictly optional measures?
Yes. So you either have that EMS layer turned on or you don't. So if you don't have that turned on, then no, you don't have to enter them, or you can turn it on, and there's specific fields that have to be entered in order to complete the chart. So it's up to you whether or not you want to use this information. I hope, does that answer your question, I hope? Okay. The EMS feedback log. So this is kind of showing you that. So the feedback log, the sites expressed a need for a single standardized form to provide key elements, performance variables, and time metrics for the EMS and referral site. So it's actually kind of like a report just to send back with the feedback so that EMS can see that. It's a single-click form. If you have the Special Initiative tab and you fill out the information, then it's a single click will produce a PDF file, and then the log also includes any EMS comments that were typed in. So here you can see at the bottom, fasting time, excellent documentation, door to 12 minutes. That will be in that feedback report, anything you type in there. The key points is used for feedback to EMS and transfer facilities, so you can also use the same report for your transfer facilities if that's something you'd like to do. There's a single click produces the PDF for printing or email, so you can do either or. And then establish a standard format for EMS and other stakeholders across the hospital and systems that participate in the Get With the Guidelines Stroke program. So this actually is what the EMS feedback form looks like. It's the Mission Lifeline Stroke feedback forms created in a PDF file with this information. The time metrics are calculated for both the system of care and the stroke center. So you have your times here, as far as, so you don't have to calculate those. The form is related to a single patient contact and transport by an EMS or transferred from another facility. So you have it at the top there, either the hospital or the EMS agency. You can type in there and then go from there. And then the form can be emailed to EMS, referral hospitals, to give both outcome information and time metrics. And this is available now. If you have the Special Initiative tab with the EMS information, then this form is available for you to start using at any time. The EMS time tracker report, like I said, it's just like the one that we have for stroke. This is what it looks like. It's got all the information, the date and time, the last known well. It talks about, their arrival date, the EMS unit. It's got a lot of information, and it's just like I said, the time tracker where we look at when did the ER doctor see them, and when did they have a CT, and when was it read, and when did they get their labs done, and when did they get their TPA. It's the same kind of form, but it's related to EMS. And again, that is available for your use now as well. The centralized EMS agency list I talked just briefly about a little bit ago. It will come out in the October release, and unfortunately, like I said, if you've already populated your EMS, then in order for this to carry on to our next stage that we're going to be doing, you will have to use the centralized EMS form. So this basically is just going to tell you step by step on what you need to do. It's with the Get with the Guidelines modules, focuses on a system of care. So it's important to be able to measure and track all of that system of care from EMS all the way through the hospital. The schedule for release is October 9th, actually, and hopefully that will not change. But at this point, it's scheduled for October 9th. And there will be, well, there actually was. There was already the webinar related to this. So you can go back and watch that webinar if that's something you're interested in to see more information about that. And again, that was yesterday's webinar. That's now on the quality website. Scheduled for release in October, all cases entered with the new EMS agency list. The old number will be moved to historical. Each site will have to recreate their EMS list. Communication will be sent to sites from IQVIA, and also you'll get information from your local QSI director with the details and a step-by-step guide on creating the list. Once your list is created, it'll be used for all records moving forward, and you can edit it at any time. So this is just the steps that are going to go through it, but if you go to My Account and then scroll down, select a code to select a code list, there's your EMS agency, collect the new code to add a code, and then you just need two identifiers. It really doesn't matter what, but probably the easiest ones would be the city and state, if you have those two, or whatever. If you have the other information, that's fine too. But if you have city and state, then those, when you put that in, this kind of a list will come up. And then you just click on that and add it. Save the selected, or you just click and then save those. Once you've located the agencies, click on it, on the line containing the agency, and then click Save. Oops, sorry. Had a jumpy finger there. So you will now be taken back to the EMS agency list screen, which will now contain the EMS list that you selected and save from the picker. So that information will be there as a drop-down select once you populate that. This is the thing that's the coolest thing ever. There's going to be more information about this in February, announced at the International Stroke Conference. But for right now, just so you know, there's been a lot of work done with the EPCR vendors and some of the EMS agencies. So what the goal is going to be is you have to have a compatible vendor. And again, you're going to learn more information at ISC, but just a very brief high-level overview. You will be able to go in, select your patient, select the EMS agency, and then the information can automatically populate into your special initiative tab. So it's going to be really nice. The abstractor still has to do a couple of clicks, but once this is up and running, it's going to be very easy for you to populate almost all, whatever measures are actually within the EMS report. So this is going to go nationwide, and that's why you have to have the national ID number for that. So any questions on that right now? I don't know if I explained it very well, but it's pretty exciting stuff.
No questions so far.
Okay. So what's on the horizon? We have lots of stuff going on here with stroke and Get with the Guidelines. This is also with heart failure, so the No Diabetes by Heart. So this is a new achievement measure that will be implemented and launched in October, actually, and it will be for 2020 for next year's award season. You can obtain this. So there's a partnership between the AHA, the American Diabetes Association, and then industry leaders, as seen here, are the sponsors for this. and it's leading organization collaborative on the new initiative to combat the growing diabetes and cardiovascular disease threat, because we know that that is a huge risk factor for our stroke patients as well as our heart failure patients. So no diabetes by heart. The initiative purpose is to reduce cardiovascular death, heart attack, stroke, and heart failure in people living with type 2 diabetes. So that is the purpose behind that. Target type 2 diabetes, so how do you participate in it? Participation and submission of the data for Get With The Guidelines will be in the heart failure or stroke. There's no new registration or award application required. It will automatically be figured by your QSI director. So the Target Type 2 Diabetes Honor Roll will be incorporated into the AHA's automated awards processes. So hopefully it'll make it pretty easy for you to be able to put this information in and to be able to get an award for this. The one thing with this award is it's not like the others where there's 85% or higher. This actually is a composite score, so it looks at all of the different measures, and they have to be at 90%. And it's ensure diabetes, so ensure the diabetes diagnosis is completed for all of your diabetes patients. So whether it's a medical history or a new diagnosis, as long as those are clicked, then they will be within this population of patients. And then the reabstraction may be necessary for some cases if the diabetes diagnosis fields were not previously completed, but only if they were not completed previously. So there's going to be lots of education and resources for this, so stay tuned for an upcoming webinar on the PMT release, educational opportunities, best practices, and more. Like I said, there'll be lots of education. And then you can always visit the heart.org Target Type 2 Diabetes and www.knowdiabetesbyheart.org. There's patient resources there, there's professional resources, and lots of things that you can use for yourself and or your patients. You can download the Know Diabetes by Heart podcast series, and then consult with your quality representative for additional opportunity and support, or if you have questions. So there will be, like I said, the webinar. There's going to be a webinar scheduled for October 3rd, 2019, and that will focus on the Target Type 2 Diabetes. So again, it's for heart failure patients, the Get With The Guidelines heart failure, and Get With The Guidelines stroke. So if you're able to, then please join us in that webinar. And there's a link to the webinar here on this page as well. So these are the actual stroke measure sets. So the measure description, you know, a lot of them are the same. So if these patients are diabetic, then they're going to pull this information for these patients. And it's the arrive by 2, treat by 3, early antithrombotics. Actually, it's pretty much the same information that you're already collecting, except for the diabetes treatment at the bottom. But it will only pull the patients that are either medical history or new onset of diabetes. So, and again, it is a composite measure at 90%. Any questions on that? It's just a new award level to be recognized, because we know you guys do amazing work. Okay, so moving right along, announcements and clinical tools. So announcements, the STK01 and STK-OP1 data submissions from IQVIA authorization. So some of you may already have gotten information about this or may already know it, but if what must happen is if there's no permission to submit those measures, STK01 and STK-OP1, to IQVIA, then you need to contact the Joint Commission and send an email to authorize for IQVIA to submit the CSTK01 and the STK-OP1 measures. They must be very specific in your communication to the Joint Commission, and IQVIA will submit both of Q1 and Q2 once they receive that permission from IQVIA. So make sure if you have not given the permission to do that, then contact your director and we can help you with that one as well. How patients arrived at your hospital, coding instructions. There was an update for freestanding EDs, which can be very confusing. So it's under the how patient arrived at your hospital data element. And the change is if the patient is transferred from a freestanding ED, the abstractor should use transfer from another hospital, not EMS from home or scene. So the coding instructions will be updated. There's so many changes going on right now that the coding instructions still need to be updated. Jason's working diligently in getting this information updated, but just so you know, that is how that should now be abstracted. Is there a question? Okay. User access and quality assurance. So a lot of people, you know, as we know, stroke coordinators come and go, and quality directors come and go, and a lot of people come and go. So if you're not keeping the list of user access up to date for their Get With The Guidelines stroke module, so it's really important to keep that user access list updated. If there's somebody that was given permission previously, they're going to continue to have that permission, and they'll be able to go into the Get With The Guidelines program until you remove them from your user. So just so you know, it's important to take a look at that. You shouldn't have many more than 10 in there. Often the users left the organization or the role, but they still have access, and that's, you know, that's kind of could be a HIPAA violation. Please send a list of, yes?
Sorry to interrupt. We do have another question.
Okay.
Do you ever work with the DNV or just Joint Commission?
We actually are working with DNV right now. We're trying to get some information so that we can do better benchmarking for the DNV hospitals. So not as much as the Joint Commission because they're our partners in working with this, but yes, we do work with the DNV because DNV does accept most of our performance measures. Some of the comprehensive measures, the definitions may be a little bit different, but we are trying to work more and more with them so that we can keep this information up to date for you. Okay, and so back to the user access. Please send a list of the users you should have access to your PMT, and you can do that by replying to your Q2 update with the names of those who should have access. So if you have your report that you recently received last week, you can just reply to that with a list of the names that should have access. If you don't know for sure, then you can always contact your QSI director, and they can send you the list of those with access to your PMT at this time. And then we can get those who have left the organization or moved on to different positions, can get them removed from your from access to your Get With The Guidelines program. So any questions on that? If you don't have access to those, your director may have them as well. So you can always either send the list, check with your director, or check with your QSI director, and they can help you with those. Public reporting of Get With The Guidelines performance. So you've recently received information about public reporting. The enrollment in Get With The Guidelines demonstrates the hospital's commitment towards improving patient care. Participating hospitals can publicly report their performance achievement measures in any module. And then as far as the stroke module goes, the STK measures, no, the achievement measures will be reported as well as the time to intravenous thrombolytic therapy at 60 minutes. That measure is included in the stroke. You decide whether you want to opt in or opt out. There has been some issues with this information getting to the appropriate person. So if you have not received an email, actually they closed as far as opting in or opting out. That was closed on Friday, but there will be a new opportunity to opt in for those who choose. If we hear nothing from you at all, then you'll be opted out, just automatically opt out. So you can either fill out the form, opt in, or you can opt out, or if you don't fill out the form, then you just will automatically opt out of that. But this is an opportunity. So it's just like the map that we have, and the maps are being worked on as well, because they're not up to date right now, but with all of this coming, these things will be worked on. So it's just like the map where you can see, are the TJC, or are you accredited? Yeah, it is Joint Commission because it's that, or certified. I mean, if you're Joint Commission certified in primary or comprehensive, it's on that map. And then also, if you have achieved a Get Well Guidelines Award, that is there as well. And then they will be adding this information so that the public can go consumer awareness, you know, so they can go and check out to see how your performance is and help to make their informed decisions as far as where they want to go for their stroke care. Potential participation in various national hospital rankings, such as the U.S. News and World Report, depending on, you know, how your measures come out. You may get credit from health plans for voluntary public reporting. You know, we're hearing more and more and more about public reporting. And then it also can meet hospital accreditation requirements for primary stroke center or comprehensive stroke center or whatever you may need. So some additional tools. Oh, first let me see if are there any questions about this information, the public reporting. This is relatively new, so I may or may not know the answer to it anyway, but if you do have questions, let us know. If we don't know the answer, we will get the answer for you. So just so you know as well, you know, Target Stroke Phase 3 started a few months ago, and there now are some clinical tools and resources available. If you just type in Target Stroke Phase 3 and click on that, you can get to a lot of these tools, but the IP or the the address is listed right here. But there is one now if you want to use it for Target Stroke, just to kind of help you to keep track of your times on the clock. There's also a time interval goal sheet that's available that you can share with your staff in the ED, the EMS agencies, or whoever else you would like to share that with. But those are some additional tools that are available for you to print and use as you like. We also have the Target Stroke Phase 3 clinical tools and resources for the door-to-device. So there's time key best practice strategies, just like we had them for Phase 2 Target Stroke. We had the same thing, you know, I think it was 10 best practices or something, but this is specifically for door-to-device time. So again, if this is something you're interested in looking at or maybe helpful for you, feel free to go in, download it, print it, do what you'd like. Any questions? All right, so I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, Allison. Allison Capetillo is from Houston. She's the QSI director in Houston, and she also is the Southwest affiliate director that is kind of in charge, or her specialty is in stroke. So she's been working on a pilot project with Houston, and it's funded by Genentech, and she is going to provide some information for you. So I will turn it over to you, Allison.
Hey, good morning, everyone, or I guess good afternoon now. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so if someone wants to advance to the next slide, awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about a pilot project we're doing here in the Houston area with, it's a partnership with Genentech, really looking at improving treatment rates in eligible patients for alteplase. We dug down in the data and did some looking to see where there was opportunities to really just hone in on some of these patients that were being discharged, not treated with alteplase, but were ultimately winding up with disability and or something worse. So go ahead and go to the next slide for me. Deb? Oh, sorry. It looks like this was the old slide, Deb. So really it was just the goal of this was all just to build upon the work of the Target Stroke Initiative that we started several years back when we really started looking at door to needle, and we really were just honing in on getting hospitals to really, really scale back those times. And so with the new launch of Target Stroke Phase 3, we thought this is a great time to expand on that and to also look at patients who did not get alteplase but would have benefited from alteplase due to reasons related to mild stroke or rapidly improving stroke. So the whole point of this project, we're kind of just bringing it to the forefront. We're just showing data, kind of repeating the same message, and really working on changing the culture. And obviously that takes time, we know, but I'm going to show you guys some data in just a minute that really shows you the impact of what we've had over the last several years. This pilot is being done in 3 cities, Boston, Houston, and Philadelphia. Each city kind of was given free rein to make the project their own and do what works best for their region. We know not every region is the same and doesn't work the same way. So with regard to Houston, we actually, as those of you in Texas know, we have racks all over the state of Texas, and these racks are really just working on systems of care. And we partnered with them and are working hand in hand on trying to get this number down. We made a goal of reduction by 25% for these 2 categories, the mild and rapidly improving. So we're really focusing on these certain get with the guidelines stroke measures to help us accelerate adherence to the guidelines. So part of this is we're definitely going to be sharing practices. We've kind of honed in on some hospitals that we're going to work with a little more closely. And then we've done webinars, we've done boot camps across the affiliate and within our market. And then just however we can support with data, tools. The group I'm working with right now is actually working on development of a physician task force to tackle this problem in the region. You can go ahead and go to the next slide if you'd like, Deb. Oh, and this is just some background information. I kind of included this in my presentation to the RAC to really kind of just talk about why we're doing this project. We know there's data to show, and there's been research around mild and rapidly improving strokes that haven't been treated, and we just know that they have a worse outcome. By and large, patients that are not treated that probably should have been treated, maybe because their NIH stroke scale score wasn't high enough, or for whatever reason that the physician decided not to treat due to mild or rapidly improving stroke symptoms. Among the patients that were looked at in the study, 29,200 of those cases, or 28.3%, did not end up ultimately going home and were unable to ambulate without assistance at discharge. So just looking at those statistics alone, we know that this is a problem, and we are really just trying to tackle this and reduce that number. All right, next slide, please. So the questions have come up several times when we start talking about mild and rapidly improving. Often the question comes up is, well, how do we look at this, and how do we know if what the patient is exhibiting is considered a disabling deficit? I found some definitions. I kind of did some digging and used some tools that we had from Genentech and looking in some of our guidelines to see where else I could find information on this. And here's what it came down to, what I found. On the left, you'll see what the AHA and ASA considers a disabling deficit. That would be complete hemianopsia greater than a 2 on the NIH stroke scale, question number 3. Severe aphasia greater than 2 on the NIH stroke scale, question number 9. Visual or sensory extinction greater than 1 on the NIH stroke scale, 11. Any weakness limiting sustained effort against gravity greater than 2 on NIH of question 5 or 6. Any deficits that lead to total NIH stroke scale greater than 5. And lastly, any remaining deficit that the patient or practitioner considers potentially disabling. This is where that clinical judgment is going to come into play. So we certainly are not going to give a prescriptive number to say when you should or shouldn't treat. We definitely think that physicians are going to have the best judgment in this area. But as you can tell, you could have one of these elements. You could have severe aphasia and only have a 2 on the NIH stroke scale and not have any other deficit. And that number alone, in some cases, was being used as a reason not to treat because that patient had only a 2 on the NIH stroke scale and not greater than a 5 or a 6. And I don't know about you, but I don't know that I'd want to not be able to talk for the rest of my life. To me, that would be a pretty severe deficit. So anyway, we just wanted to put this out there to kind of put it in perspective of what what those low NIH stroke scale values can actually mean and how disabling those can truly be. Another thing that you can use is just answering some of these questions. These were put out, I think, in a tool that Genentech has. Some of you may have seen it before, but it has the following questions on there that you can ask. Would you be able to return to work as normal? Would you be able to perform everyday activities and hobbies? And do you consider any symptoms to be disabling? For example, will weakness of your hand affect your daily life? Is the patient ambulatory? Can they hold or understand a conversation? And one thing that has come up time and again when we've had these presentations is that truncal ataxia is often missed. And generally, if a patient has truncal ataxia, they're probably going to be non-ambulatory. So it's something that would be really valuable to add to your general assessment of stroke patients, if you're able to, is to get them to sit up to the side of the bed. So just some things like that we've started talking about as a region as things to add to our current practice. Next slide, please. Okay, so like I mentioned before, the premise of this project is really just to change the culture and to change the way we're thinking about treating with alteplase. As many of you know, kind of the old way of thinking was we're going to treat the number. NIH stroke scale, patient has a 4, we're not going to treat it because it's a 4. But as you saw before on the previous slide, a 4 can be absolutely devastating. So we're really just trying to get people to move to this new way of thinking. Is it a disabling deficit or is it a non-disabling deficit? That's really up to the patient and the physician to decide together, or the family. Next slide. Thank you. So as I mentioned before, several years ago in 2009, Target Stroke was introduced. This was a national initiative with a goal of doubling the number of eligible patients who receive TPA within 60 minutes. In 2013 and 14, the goal was reached, that's an amazing turnaround time, honestly, to look at moving an entire nation in just a few short years is really incredible. And so today, 75% of patients are treated within 60 minutes. And I'd actually venture to say this number is probably a little outdated. I think it's even higher than that now, upwards of 80%. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And so Target Stroke Phase 3, as you know, was rolled out this year. We're kind of building on that same innovative idea that if we focus on one really high-level intervention, or in this case, in Target Stroke Phase 3, there's a couple of different interventions with ELVAs being added, that if we deliver TPA sooner in more patients, that will drive better patient outcomes among our top-performing hospitals. And we have really noticed that through all of this, just by affecting this one measure, this TPA delivered within 60 minutes, it's affecting the entire spectrum of stroke treatment and care. Patients are getting treated faster. They're winding up with better outcomes, maybe almost complete or complete resolution of symptoms, winding up with less deficit in the end. So that's what we want. That's what we're here for. Next slide, please. Okay, so this was actually looking back in 2012, looking at where we kind of stood with Target Stroke at that time. In 2012, we were still in that first phase of Target Stroke, so we were looking at 50% of patients being treated in less than 60 minutes. And this just gives you an idea of across the country where we stood. And you can kind of see really quickly, there were a lot of states that were really struggling. Only a few that were red were meeting that 50% goal. The rest of the states were really struggling. So next slide. So cut to 2014, when we upped the goal to 75%, now you can really start to see where we have this vast improvement across the country. Almost every state is above 50%. Many states are above 75%, and just a handful of states at this point are like either not participating or didn't really have enough data. So this just gives you a great idea of perspective of like where we've come from and how far we've come. And then cut to the next slide for me. So I kind of wanted to hone down a little bit on where our region had been, and I'm going to show you guys the Houston region. So for those of you who are on this phone call who are from Houston, you've probably seen this before. You can go ahead and show the next slide, Deb. I broke the target stroke data down by performance for the last 8 years. And I wanted to see what the trend looked like in all three of those categories, the 60, the 45, and the 30. And holy moly, this is fantastic. You can see right off the bat, there's just really nice increase over time in the compliance on these measures. And it's just, I wanted to show this to the group because I think often we don't take that 10,000 foot view, like step back and really look at how far we've come. We're really focusing on the here and now, the last 2 quarters of data, and you don't see those big changes as much. So it's important to kind of give yourself some perspective and look back at how far you've come. And I do see like a slight little increase in this 30-minute window. I know we just started looking at that, but it's important to note that as we've focused on the 60-minute window and then, of course, the 45-minute window, those times just started naturally coming down, and we started to see people getting excited about door-to-needle and getting excited about, oh, my gosh, I got a 10-minute door-to-needle the other day, or I got a 17-minute door-to-needle, and they're just so excited about it. And we naturally started to see that 30-minute window start ticking upward, and that's great. That's what we want. I did circle really quick because I wanted to show you guys, between 2012 and 2013, that is a huge jump. And I was really proud of our region just for making it. You can really truly see, like, we made such an impact in that year. And 20% jump is phenomenal. It takes usually a lot longer than a year to make that happen. So I was really proud of our region for that. Go ahead, next slide. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys the Alta-Place administration rates in our region as well. Again, I pulled this back for the last 8 years because I wanted to see what the trend looked like. Some of you probably look at this benchmarked against the nation too to see kind of where you stand. Most of the country right now is probably hovering right around, I think around like 12%, maybe 10%, something like that, the last I checked. And so our region has typically done pretty well. We've always kind of been a little bit above the state and the nation. You can see back in 2010, we were hovering right around just under 8% administration rate, and all the way to 2018, we're up at about 15%. So great movement in that area. We've definitely seen a big jump in the number of patients being treated, and that really shows how much impact we've made in identifying patients, getting patients to the right place in the right amount of time, educating the community, making people understand that you've got to move quickly in these cases. Next slide. So I've narrowed this down a little bit more. For this exact project that we're working on, we're really focusing on the patients who did not get treated, right? So we want to look at those patients who did not get treated, but more specifically for the reasons of mild and rapidly improving. And then we also sort of kind of want to look at these unable to determine eligibility patients. I know those are considered acceptable and get with the guidelines, but our group decided that this was also an area we wanted to focus on a little bit just because there's some discrepancy between how that reason for not treating can be used. So that is something that we also decided to take a look at. As you can see, the mild stroke reasons, I would say they've come down maybe a smidge, but not much. We started looking back at Q1 2017 all the way to Q1 2019. I would say it's just kind of hovered, maybe around, on average, about 33%. Same with rapid improvement, hovering right around maybe 25% on average. So it shows you really quickly, though, these reasons are getting used a lot. When you start looking at all of the patients that were not treated, and kind of typically, if you kind of average all these out, 60% of those maybe roughly are not getting treated for these two reasons. That's a lot of people that are just getting left out of TPA, listed at Alta-Place for just two reasons. So I'm going to go to the next slide, Deb. I drilled down on this a little bit further because we wanted to see if there are hospitals that were utilizing those two reasons more often than others. And of course, we did find there were several culprits. These are blinded, so nobody knows who these are. So I pulled them because it helps me to look at, if I look at hospital A through E, but looking specifically at hospital C and E, I can see very quickly that these two hospitals, for all of their patients that are not getting alteplase, they're using either of these two reasons, almost all of their patients. So that just really, really shows you, it's very impactful when you look at it in this way to realize that they're not giving TPA for any other reason but mild or rapidly improving. And so that tells me that we've got to do some intervention there. We've got to talk to them a little bit. We've got to find out, how can we help? How can we really impact this number? Because as I mentioned before, as a region, our goal is to drive this number down by 25% overall. So we're kind of keeping an eye on it. Hopefully maybe next quarter I can show you guys an update of where we are and give you an idea of how much we've been able to move the number. Next slide. Okay, sorry, I think the text was white on the side, so I apologize. These are just some reports that you might find useful if you're looking at possibly using these. If you want to look at these numbers on your own inside your hospital, you might find it helpful to look at your thrombolytic therapies report. If you don't know how to pull that report or you need assistance, just contact your director. But particularly, you're going to want to look at the IV TPA initiated in this hospital. It's going to be that bar on the far left. And then go to the next slide for me, Deb. That's the bar chart version. But then you'll notice if you scroll down a little bit, you can see what the numerator and denominator, what the patient numbers are for each of those bars. So if you look at your hospital, you can see the numbers of patients that are included in each bar. And next slide. So you also have a reasons for no IV TPA report. If you haven't ever looked at this before, this will break out every single reason that you've selected and get with the guidelines for not giving alteplase. And if you'll look on the kind of toward the middle of that bar chart, you've got rapid improvement and mild stroke. Those are the two that we are focusing on for the purposes of this report, of this project. So next slide. And so you can actually pull that same report, the reasons for no IV TPA. You can pull it out into a patient records report. You just change the format of that report. When you tell your configurable measures how you want it to display, you tell it patient records instead of bar chart. And once you do, this will come up in the screen. You have the option to either stay in this format. You can click on the show filters, which is kind of up at the top left, or you can export it to Excel up here. Thanks, Deb. I forget nobody can see my mouse. Yes, so you can click export to Excel if you want. And so once you're in that format, you can manipulate the data a little more. You could start narrowing it down. From here, you have all of the patients who were given those two reasons. And I think you actually can filter it in this screen down to just your mild and rapidly improving patients. So from here, really what you want to look at is a couple of things. You want to look at, did they get there within the time window? Was that the appropriate reason for not giving TPA? Was there some other reason that was maybe more, that should have been selected first that was more important? You can also drill down further and look at the outcomes of those patients. It would be important to look at and find out, did that patient start out ambulating and then discharge not being able to ambulate? Or did that patient come in from home and then discharge to a SNF? So those types of questions are very easy to answer and really just give you a better picture of how that patient did overall. I will mention while we're here, there is a report that's being built right now and Get With the Guidelines, and it will be a version of this report, but it will be filtered down for you already just to those mild and rapidly improving cases. And it will also have elements added for ambulation status on arrival, ambulation status at discharge, discharge destination, NIH stroke scale, and then I think the modified rank will also be available in that report. So it really will be a little bit better picture. We've been working on creating that as a tool for the coordinators because we feel like this might be helpful to have it all in one place for you. And you can just run it really quick and have all of that information right in front of you. So more to come on that. Hopefully later this fall we'll get a better idea of when that should be coming. Next slide. Oh, that's it. Sorry, guys. So, Deb, I guess I'll turn it back over to you. If you guys have any questions about what we're doing in Houston, feel free to reach out to me. Again, Allison Cappuccio at heart.org. Okay.
Thank you, Allison. So, sorry we're over a little bit on time. That was a lot of information, but again, you will get a copy of these slides. If you do have questions, is there any questions right now, Audrey, that I need to answer?
No questions.
Okay. So thank you everybody for joining us. I hope that this was helpful for you. And if you do have questions or comments, please reach out to your QSI director and have a great rest of your day. Bye.